All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We are here today for some NBA DFS daily fantasy basketball lineup advice, picks for FanDuel and DraftKings for today, May 7th. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. We'll be here for about 30 minutes or so until 5:30 p.m. Eastern, answering all of your questions about NBA DFS, giving you lineup advice for both FanDuel and DraftKings, and then the top picks from our daily plug and our Occupy model at OccupyFantasy.com. Our resident NBA expert at Occupy Fantasy is Garrett at GStroms99 on Twitter. He is one of the writers of the Daily Plug. G, what's happening, bro?
Not too much, man. Finished up my college career. I'm ready to talk some basketball, move on.
Man, I remember those days, and congrats to you. For those of you
Thanks.
watching, send a congrats to G in the chat for finishing up college today. Dude, I know when I was, it's there's some times when you don't think you're ever gonna finish. So when you actually get that diploma, it's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. Finally move on, next
Yeah.
part of life.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, we'll be here till 5:30. Uh, this is great time to pick the brains of our NBA DFS expert. I trust G with everything NBA related. I mean, this guy has won live finals packages. He split a milli one time, didn't get the whole million, but he got part of it.
Close
One of the
enough.
yeah, close enough. One of the best satellite strategy players I know. Just all the way in on NBA. So if you have questions, Garrett is the guy to ask. So, Garrett, as always with NBA DFS, we have to talk about the injury situations. And in our daily plug, which you see on screen here at Occupy Fantasy, we have an if then section, which basically prepares you for the news before lock. So you're not scrambling 3 minutes before the game start. I mean, you probably will anyways, but at least it's a dedicated scramble. You know what's going on. So in our if then section, we say if this happens, then do this. And Garrett, we have 3 or 4 situations today that we'll be monitoring for the next couple hours.
Yeah, and the biggest one obviously is the Rockets. Um, as you see, we don't really have anything up there for them yet because 13 of their 17 players that are on their roster are currently listed on their injury report. Big names, Avery Bradley, DJ Wilson, Kevin Porter Jr. are all out. Daniel House is doubtful, so he's likely out. And then you got DJ Augustine, Jay Sean Tate, Christian Wood, Kelly Olynyk, all questionable. And then they have a bunch of other guys who have been out for a really long time, and they're not expected to be back anytime soon.
But other than that, they're at full strength.
Yes, they have four guys who are at full strength: Armani Brooks, Kenyon Martin Jr. Um, I don't know their whole
Dig deep,
roster.
dig deep.
um, let's see. Anthony Lamb and Daquan Jeffries. Those are their fully healthy guys tonight.
Cool. So, I mean, that's a situation that, depending on who is actually ruled in, assuming they have enough players, will drastically change the slate, right? Because if we get a couple guys out that beyond those who are already listed out, I mean, that's just extreme value, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, like if they have five guys, I believe the game's going to play. Because none of them are COVID related, so the game's on. As long as they have five guys to actually throw on the court. Jay Sean Tate was a COVID situation, but it was deemed a false positive. So now I think for him, it's just conditioning and whether or not he can get back on the court. But other than that, everyone else is just injured.
It's like AAU tournaments or high school summer league where whoever can get to the game and play, if we get five, will run. And that's what the
E-
Rockets are doing tonight.
Exactly. One of the Rockets beat writers basically said, yeah, the Rockets can pull up to their game tonight in a little minivan and just fit all their players in there.
Which is what we love to see from DFS, right? If we get those shorthanded situations, those are the teams we like to target. But Garrett, there are other situations, other injuries that have already been listed, other
hmm
teams we have to monitor. So what do those look like?
Well, we just got news in now. Brandon Ingram's out for the Pelicans. Steven Adams is doubtful. Zion Williamson was just ruled out indefinitely for the Pelicans,
Well,
so he's out tonight as well for the Pelicans against the Sixers. That's a new one. So him being out just boost James Johnson even more. Someone that's already in the daily plug from Steven Adams being absent, Brandon Ingram being absent. That will also boost up Lonzo Ball big time. The offense is going to run through Lonzo. It will also boost, Willie Hernan Gomez and Najee Marshall. Um, Other than that injury, we have a Miami Heat situation with Butler and Hero questionable. If Butler's out, it becomes Bam Adebayo. He becomes basically a big part of the offense. He's a triple double threat. And then if Tyler Herro's out, that also brings Goran Dragic into play in the point guard position. And then the last one we have is Joel Embiid. He's questionable tonight. So if he's out, Tobias Harris leads the team in DK points per minute and usage rate, and he'll be a low risk power forward. And then Dwight Howard will become a center option on DraftKings, but not FanDuel due to pricing. He might not start, but he'll get the meaningful minutes.
Cool. So yeah, so take a breath. Lots of injuries to think about and dissect tonight. So I guess my question to you, G, is like, I mean, this is a lot to take in, and if you're making just one or two lineups, where do you start? Like, how do you filter all this information to pick the best plays? Because you end up on some of these slates like this where there's just so much value, so much good
Mhm.
value too. And then I think you mentioned in the contest selection section, in the lineup construction section at the bottom of the daily plug, that even though we have all this value, it's not like we have any slam dunk elite plays. And I think
Mhm.
that kind of shows when you and I were looking at the model right before we went live. The typical studs, Jokic and Giannis and some of these other guys aren't even at the top of the model. It's actually Jason Tatum in our model. So how do we handle studs not being in the best spots plus all this value?
Yeah, so I mean, the a lot of people when they see all this value on the slate, they're gonna go right to the stars and scrubs build, which is the right way to go. The big issue with that is, getting the right ones. So, I mean, obviously tonight you have a lot of elite options with tough matchups or way too easy matchups where they're in a potential blowout. Giannis is, Milwaukee's favored by 17 points.
Yeah.
Jokic is going up against Rudy Gobert, which is a much tougher matchup than usual. Joel Embiid, if he plays, is in a blowout potential game now with Zion out. You have Luka Doncic up against Cleveland in a potential blowout game. His team's favored by 10.5 now. So it's about finding the value that you think can get you there in potentially limited minutes. On DraftKings, that's going to be guys who you think can get triple doubles, get those bonuses. Like Giannis can do that, Jokic can do that, Luka can do that. On FanDuel, it's more about who fits into your lineup better, since positions are more important on FanDuel, since you won't each player only fits into one, and it's about you know who you think could what games might be able to stay close, who has an easy matchup so that in their limited time they can produce.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, and the one thing we have to think about here, we always think about value and fitting guys into lineups, but if we have so much value that can get us there, sometimes it is just about the raw points. Like if we can get a stud to put up
Mhm.
40, 50, it may not be true value on a normal slate, but if we get those guys to put up enough points, I mean, that's easy enough. That's easy, and definitely enough to get to the top of leaderboards, assuming we got 3K and 4K guys scoring 20, 30 points.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if the value guys hit, I mean, you don't need your elite options to go for 6 or 7 times value. You might just need 5.5, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, good stuff there. Good discussion. We always like talking about lineup construction. It's one of the big tenets here at Occupy Fantasy.
Mhm.
If you're just tuning in, we got news that Zion Williamson is out indefinitely. Brandon Ingram also out for the Pels. We're still waiting on news from the Rockets, the Heat, and Joel Embiid's status. Now, the other situation that has already been clarified, Garrett, is this
Mhm.
Kings situation. And we have two guys that end up with extreme value. They're going to be two of the most popular players on the slate as of right now. And they're two guys that are in your core options for FanDuel and DraftKings.
Yeah, so DeLon Wright, we've seen what he can do the last 2 games without, De'Aaron Fox, without Harrison Barnes, and potentially Chimezi Metu again tonight. And of course Tyrese Halliburton, who's out for the year. DeLon Wright's had 2 straight games with 55 DraftKings points. He's only 7,000 on FanDuel, 6,800 on DraftKings still. He's playing almost 40 minutes. He's a triple double threat, and he's averaged 5 steals the last 2 games.
Wow.
So I mean, he's going up against the San Antonio team. Their guard defense isn't great. So he's going right back into the core for both sides. He should be, if not the first, one of the first guys you plug into your lineup. I know he's not a star, and I know he's not a scrub, but when you have that kind of player who can put up that kind of production, you're going to put him in. Marvin Bagley is a DraftKings only core play. On FanDuel, his price is now up to 7,000. So we are going to stay a little bit away from him on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, he's still under 6K, and he's produced 40 DK points in 3 of the last 4 games without those guys on the floor. So especially if Metu's out tonight, Bagley should get as many minutes as he can handle at the big man spot, since they only really have Bagley, Holmes, and Whiteside, really, who hasn't even been playing any minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, these situations are it's always interesting to me because we have these guys, and you just said like Delon Wright's not a stud, but
Hmm.
you figure you get to this point in the league, right? You're a baller,
It's true.
like Delon Wright was an absolute baller in college, and you get these guys who are the world class players. If they're going to play 40 minutes a night, right, and they
Hmm.
have the value and they play in a fast-paced game, like almost everyone who gets that opportunity in the NBA, especially if they're on the ball, like Delon Wright, like they're going to put
Hmm.
up points. So you see a lot of people say, I don't know who that guy is, or I don't trust this guy. It's like, listen, you play the numbers in NBA, you play the matchups, play the value, and it's going to get you there more often than not. And your point about Marvin Bagley is also super important to just realize which site you're playing on because if you're reading content out there or you listen to a podcast and you say, oh, this guy's a great play tonight, yeah, he might be, but only on one site, and it really depends on the rest of your lineup construction. So good points there, Garrett.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
let's see. So it is 5:11. We'll be here for 19 more minutes till 5:30 p.m. Eastern. If you like what you hear so far, make sure you click that subscribe button. Get notified whenever we go live here on YouTube or upload any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. That shows your support. It honestly lets us know that you like this type of content and we should continue these types of live shows. So if you like it, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to join our Discord channel and ask us, 7 to 10 questions 5 minutes before lock, click the join button right below the video. That'll get you access to our Occupy Fantasy members and staff only Discord channel. All right, Garrett. So we talked about the injury situations. Nothing new has changed since we started the show, right? After the Zion
Other
news.
than Zion, Nigel did point out that Kyrie Thomas has signed a 10-day contract with Houston. That is correct. It just became official, I believe, a few minutes ago. Um, I don't know if he will be eligible to play tonight. I feel like he should. I think they were just waiting for him to clear protocol. But I want to get clear word on that before putting that out there. But he's still not available on either site unless they add him in, now. But I doubt they do it this late.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot to ask of these sites to add a player 2 hours before lock. So, but again, that just because he's not on the slate doesn't mean he's not taking minutes away from somebody else if he does play. So,
Exactly. I mean, they might just run a 5-man rotation and put Kyrie Thomas in there at this point.
right, true. I mean, at this point, I'm about to sign a 10-day contract with the Rockets and head out there. So,
Let's all put in our applications.
yeah, gee, I feel like you and I could at least be 6 and 7 men off the bench.
Oh,
You
for sure.
had some hustle. So, um,
Add a good 20 minutes.
I mean, I don't know. You think on a switch, you think you could hold Giannis in check?
I think so. He's not really that hard to cover.
Yeah, just play off him. Just force the jumper.
Exactly. There you go. Just make him shoot threes all night. I'm sure he'll miss more than he'll make.
It's like Giannis drops 90 on Garrett. Garrett.
As long as
Um,
he doesn't drop 100, it's
yeah,
okay.
there you go. So, all right. Again, if you have questions, let's ask them in the chat at this time. We're here till 5:30. So any questions you have, just ask them. That'll guide the show. Garrett, we are in the Occupy model right now, and this ownership updated around 5 p.m. Eastern before the Zion news. And of course, this is going to change before 7 o'clock too as we get more news. But of course, we have to have a discussion right now. So assuming things
Mhm.
stay the same, which they won't, we're looking at the highest projected owned players on the slate in the model. I've sorted by DraftKings projected ownership. We have the two Sacramento guys, Bagley and Wright, near the
Mhm.
top. Alex Caruso, who's also questionable. Mo Bamba, he's on the cover of the plug, right?
Yes, he is.
Mo Bamba. And then a couple other guys here. Um, let's see here. Does anybody surprise you in this projected high ownership list above 20%, or anyone you think maybe doesn't belong?
At 20%, I'm pretty surprised with Royce O'Neal. I understand, the Jazz are still missing um Conley and Mitchell. But Royce O'Neal kind of surprised me, especially with all the value at power forward tonight. We have Millsap. James Johnson's definitely going to see minutes tonight. Jared Vanderbilt from Minnesota. So we got a lot of those guys. Other than that, I think the biggest surprise to me has got to be probably Luka Doncic. He's in the plug as a point guard option. I guess because of all the value, people are going to be able to get up to Luka. I'm just kind of surprised that I'm kind of surprised that he's up ahead of Giannis. I guess Embiid's probably get his ownership's getting taken down because of his questionable tag, but I'm a little surprised by that.
Yeah, speaking of questionable tags, and I think this is always interesting to think about just the psychology of it. Sean in the chat says he wants to run Olynyk so bad, but hates that he has the Q mark next to his name. So what's Olynyk's situation specifically, Garrett?
I gotta go back and look at the injury report, see if they specify anything about him. Um, let's see. I have a giant list here of their injuries. Um, he has a right ankle sore. He has right ankle soreness. That's his injury. So I think if Olynyk plays, you can play him.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, we see this all the time in all sports, right? Any player with that
Yeah.
injury tag next to their name, and they get lowered ownership regardless. I mean,
hmm
especially on a slate like this, we have so much value. He's going to get pretty low ownership. I mean, if we look in the model here, let me see if he's even projected for ownership. Yeah, 9%
Yeah.
on DraftKings, 6% on FanDuel, so
I
not
think
insignificant.
if Christian Wood gets ruled out and Kelly Olynyk gets ruled in, I think you will see his ownership skyrocket,
Yeah,
especially if it's before lock.
I mean, again, it's the year is 2021, right? We have a lot of sharp DFS content out there, a lot of sharp players, and so just because he has a questionable tag may not mean that he gets a lowered ownership, I guess, especially if he's in that good of a spot. But I guess the point here, Sean, is if he's in a good spot and he's playing, we would trust him. So, question from Nigel for you, Garrett. What do you think of
Mhm.
this Lakers and Portland game? They're fighting for playoff seeding. Who do you like on FanDuel as the best from each side in that game?
That's a good question. Especially that game's going to go very overlooked tonight. It's not a game that people are going to target too much in low risk. Definitely a high risk approach there. CJ McCollum is someone I like. He's in the daily plug. Um, you know, a lot of people tend to go towards Damian Lillard. But that's who LA is going to focus on tonight. And I mean, as great as Damian Lillard is, CJ McCollum, he's been just as good since coming back from his injury this year. He can put up some big scoring games. He takes up some of the distribution roles. So in my opinion, he's my favorite Portland play. My favorite LA play probably goes between Caruso and Kuzma. I know I on FanDuel actually it would be Kuzma. Caruso is too priced up on FanDuel, so it's got to be Kuzma for me.
Yeah, and that shows in the DraftKings and FanDuel value columns of the model. Caruso with a 15 DK value, Kuzma 13.9. But if you flip over to FanDuel, Kuzma leads the pack in this game, 14.2. Caruso drops all the way down to 12. And of course, we have Occupy model favorite Contavious Caldwell Pope at the top of DraftKings for no reason. So, um, oh, and Sean in the chat says he is White Boy 59 from the
Mhm.
Discord. What's up, man? Yeah, didn't we don't recognize a lot of people when their government names show up here on YouTube. So, what's up, man? Nice to see you. If you want to talk to him and other people in Discord, make sure you click the join button below the video, get access to our Discord channel. So, all right, I know I like to talk about this every time
Mhm.
I'm on the show with you, and I know Moose tries to bring it up as well. We know that the very top NBA DFS players that play 150 lineups,
Yeah.
their strategy and the way they get those big wins in GPPs when they enter 150 lineups, they tend to match the field on some of the highest known guys. So like the Delon Wrights, the Marvin Bagley type guys, they'll go with
Yeah.
what the field does, 30, 40, 50%. Where they get their true leverage are those guys in that 10 to 30% range. So I'm gonna sort again by DraftKings ownership. And if we look at just guys, again, this is going to change, but just this is teaching you how to think about things. And if you're building, 5, 10, even up to 150 lineups. So we're looking at guys in the Model G that are between 10 and 25%. Any of these guys stand out, projected DraftKings ownership, that you think, wow, I should get way over the field. I should get tons of leverage on these guys.
Looking at the DraftKings ownership, Jared Vanderbilt and James Johnson are two that really stick out. There's some big, they're going to see big minutes tonight. For Minnesota, they have some injuries that are weakening their front court, and obviously New Orleans now, as we hear about Zion. I don't know if the model's updated with that yet or not, but James Johnson should see some big minutes at the front court. So those are two names. I know they're at 18% ownership, which seems about right. I feel like I might go a little bit over on them. And then another name that kind of sticks out to me is Jimmy Butler. It's a bit of a high risk approach here, but he's going up against Minnesota. Everyone knows his relationship with Minnesota didn't end quite well.
To say the
Um,
least.
it's it's going with a little bit of a narrative here more than anything else, but it is a great matchup. And the Heat are fighting for playoff seeding too, I believe, which that's pretty big for them too. I'm going to double check that first before I go all in with it. But just that narrative against Minnesota, yeah, they're fighting to either play in the play-in game or to be the sixth seed, so that's pretty huge. Um, so that's another thing I'd look out for is Jimmy Butler. It's a bit high risk, but going over on the ownership for him might be a pretty nice idea and high risk.
Yeah, I mean that again. We're always looking for reasons to play guys, right? Maybe not as
Yeah.
much in really math-based sports like NBA, but again, these guys are humans too. So if we can find a narrative reason, I always say it when I'm on stream, if you can find a reason to play a low-owned guy or a lower-owned guy,
Hmm.
and then I say go for it. We're always looking for leverage. If you can find reasons to get that leverage, then definitely go for it. And again, this is going to change as we get news from Houston, from Miami, potentially
Yeah.
from Philadelphia. So keep an eye on this, and you're going to have to make these decisions, probably 5, 10, 30 minutes before lock. So just keep an eye, and it's always good to practice this type of decision making because if you're going to play NBA, you have to be around close to lock. You have to be around after lock sometimes. And the more you play, the more you get used to these types of decisions, how quickly you have to make them. So just advice to everyone: if you are playing, try to play every day if you can. And if you can't, you're definitely at a disadvantage compared to most people. So keep an eye on that. You can use the Occupy Fantasy lineup builder that updates, every minute leading up to lock. And so when these ownerships do come in, it can make a lot of the decisions for you. So you can check that out, occupyfantasy.com/lineup builder. So let's see here, 5:22, 8 minutes left. If you guys have any final questions, now is the time to get them in, to get them answered by Garrett. Garrett, any other situations or players or strategies you want to talk about?
Yeah, looking at the plug today, we obviously Mo Bamba's the cover player, and he's in both of our cores. So our cores are made specifically for that site. When you're building your low risk lineups, look at our cores. Use those to kind of guide you in your lineup construction. As you can see, there are no true elite options in our course tonight, but that's just that we kind of went over that. There are no truly great elite options tonight. Literally, we've looked through it, and there aren't any that truly stick out as bright spots that can go off for 70, 80 DraftKings points or FanDuel points. But there are great value plays that especially like stick out to us, and there might be a few in the same position. So on FanDuel, you see Jared Vanderbilt, James Johnson, Paul Millsap. They're all power forwards, but we love all of them. So potentially try and fit two of the three in your lineup, something like that. So use the course to your advantage. They're there to kind of help guide you through the start of your lineup construction.
Yeah, so this is how I would characterize the core. And Garrett, tell me if I'm off base here, but
Hmm.
these are the guys you think are in the best spots, or the best values, the best overall plays. And so many times, more often than not, these are going to be the highest owned players on the slate. So for your low risk lineups, these are the guys you should get in first, jam in. Not only do they get the stamp of approval by Garrett and Tommy, they get the stamp of approval by the field with the high ownership. And then when you start making your high risk lineups, and we always say in the lineup construction section to keep a core from your low risk lineup. And
Hmm.
if you're making just one or two lineups, Garrett, this is probably the core you want to keep. And if you're making 100, 20, 150 lineups, these are the guys you want to match the field on, assuming the ownership is up there, and then find those other guys to get leverage. Right? Is that kind of on point there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. When you're playing high risk, you don't want your lineup to be filled with guys who are 4, 7, 9% owned. That's not usually how NBA works, especially in DFS. High owned guys, they're high owned for a reason. We always say this. Jared Vanderbilt isn't going to be 30% or whatever owned tonight because, he's a shitty play and no one wants, and he's, just a bad play in every single way possible. There's a reason why he's high owned. There's a reason why people think he's going to do well. And I mean, it's pretty clear, the injuries with Minnesota. I think that, and he's so cheap. So, I mean, high owned is high owned for a reason. So it's hard to fade that completely. It's really hard to just go super low owned on that, especially when you're maxing it, because a lot of people will get ahead of you if that if that chalk hits, and usually it does.
I believe me, I learned that the hard way. I don't play a ton of NBA, but if you guys have watched any of the videos where I'm on, I'm always looking to fade some of the high owned guys, get leverage elsewhere. In every sport where it's event based, it makes sense, right? MMA, a guy could get knocked out or not get a knockout. MLB, they
Yep.
could just go over 4 at the plate. NFL, gets overthrown on some deep passes, doesn't get in the end zone, misses value. NBA, it's really tough. They have to like miss
Yeah.
every single shot. They have to get in early foul trouble, and that's really the only two ways. Because when they're this good of value and they get that opportunity, Garrett, I mean, these are professional players. They're gonna hit their value more often than not. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, at least to me, I love playing NBA DFS. I love the NBA, but I'm gonna be completely honest, it's one of the most frustrating fantasy sports you can play because you know, there's so many scoring opportunities. So much can change in a matter of seconds. In the NBA, 30 seconds later, you could see a player. Player can get injured. Player can have two fouls in 25 seconds of a game. We've seen that plenty of times. A player in a great situation gets two fouls right off the bat, gets taken out of the game till like the second half.
the
So,
worst.
I mean, it sucks sometimes, but also it's a great sport. It's a great opportunity in DFS to really get ahead of people. Some people just make stupid decisions. Centers against Joel Embiid. That's usually something you want to avoid.
Speaking of things changing quickly in NBA DFS, I have no idea how you guys sweat that Millie split. For those who don't know, both of our NBA writers actually split the NBA million on FanDuel. Was it? It was during the bubble, right, G?
Yeah, it was during the bubble. I
Yeah.
think it
So
was the first game back in the bubble.
yeah, first game back in the bubble, they split the millie. I mean, dude, it's rough enough sweating NFL late in the game. I don't know how the hell you sweat an NBA game, an NBA GPP takedown.
It's kind of fun. I mean, like you look at who people have around you, you kind of have a general idea because everyone around you probably has somewhat of the same lineup because you know who's doing well, you know who's not. Me and Tommy we were on the phone. We were talking on the phone the whole time it was happening. Probably like halfway through the fourth quarter, we just called each other and uh, we were trying to go through like 80,000 scenarios.
Which our brains can easily handle at that time, right? Like that was
Yeah,
very easy.
100. And it sucks because that one lineup obviously won. That was great. I thought I had a lineup. I think there was like a big difference. Paul George hit two threes at the end of the game that pushed that one lineup up to the top. I think if Paul George didn't make those two threes, I think there was like one of my lineups that was only banked like four times that could have potentially won. But like, it's better to win than to possibly win. You never know.
I mean, that's the situation where it's tough to root for, right? You're like, I want this
Mhm.
lineup to win, but I need to thread the needle with these three things. Where if these other two things happen that are much more likely, I'll win, but just not as much. So then it becomes
Yeah.
impossible to root for at that point. So
Exactly. I mean, if you have a multiple up near the top, you have a good feeling one of them's gonna hit. You're just rooting for one to hit more than another.
believe me, I 100% know that feeling for
Yeah.
sure. So, all right, guys, that'll just about do it. It's 5:28. Let's get any rapid fire questions in. If you don't get your questions here in time, you can always comment on the video. We'll try to get back to you. Obviously, NBA is a very fast paced sport. As far as news and information. So if you have any high level questions, the best way to reach us is to comment on this video and we'll get back to you when we can. But if you have any questions before lock, you want to hop in our Discord channel. So click the join button right below this video. That'll get you access to our Discord channel for members and staff to talk to each other.
Mhm.
OccupyFantasy.com/Discord for more information. If you like what you've seen so far, make sure you click that subscribe button. We got tons of live streams coming down your way. We have a UFC stream tomorrow. Then of course we'll be back next week for MLB, golf, and potentially more NBA. And then give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate that. It lets us know that we should continue to make these types of videos. Click the thumbs up button. G, final thoughts. 1 minute for the slate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna update the plug with, the Zion news when we get off of here. But, guys, keep an eye on that Rockets news. That could be the holy grail tonight. That could be, the thing that creates your lineups. Honestly, that could change the entire core tonight because if they have six players, three of those players could end up being core plays because the value there is just so insane. So keep an eye on that. I'll tweet out anything that I see. I will post in the Discord those tweets that I see. But just keep your eyes plugged. That's something big with NBA. You need to be around before lock. You need to be around after lock. Until all of your players in your games are playing, you can't not pay attention.
Absolutely. And on that note, make sure you follow G on Twitter at GStroms99 for any late breaking NBA news. And of course, Philadelphia sports complaints. Definitely follow him on Twitter for that. You can follow me on Twitter at Brian Jester FF. You can follow us on Twitter at Occupy Fantasy. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get the daily plug with the top plays and lineup strategies for every sport, as well as the Occupy model, which ranks every player for FanDuel and DraftKings. So for G, I'm Brian. We appreciate everyone listening tonight. Good luck, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.